Hello. Rain falling from a sky that didn't want to rain. Snow forming where none should exist, and storms nudging into life on purpose. What if the weather, that most unpredictable force of nature, wasn't entirely unpredictable? And this is a good one. What if governments, agencies, and private companies could influence the skies? Just enough to claim control over water itself. Well, this is breaking the system, and today we're asking, who controls the weather, who profits from it, and what happens when humans start meddling with the sky? And this is a good one, I think. There's a lot of people that they're like, this is a conspiracy, you're a conspiracy theorist, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's look into it, okay? So cloud seeding is not conspiracy. It begins with chemistry. And so let's go back. Let's go back to 1946 and let's look at an American chemist by the name of Vincent Schaefer. Schaefer. Okay? And he was working for General Electric, and he discovered that introducing dry ice into supercooled clouds caused ice crystals to form and precipitation to fall. And so the experiment over the Berkshire Mountains worked, and rain appeared where none was forecast. And almost immediately, the implications went far beyond science. If rain could be triggered, could drought be reduced? And if snowfall, could be increased for things like reservoirs, could hail be produced or be suppressed to protect crops? And in the shadow of World War II and the emerging Cold War, could weather itself become a strategic weapon? Right? Could we actually use weather and weather modifications? Sorry, I got a dog that's sleeping underneath me. Could weather and weather modifications be used in warfare? Right? And these are all great questions to be asking, right? So let's start with the weather warfare, and anyone that's ever looked into this knows a little operation called Operation Popeye. Okay? And so this was during the Vietnam War. From 1967 to 1972, the U.S. military conducted Operation Popeye. And that was a classified weather modification program designed to extend the monsoon seasons over enemy supply routes along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So aircraft dispersed silver iodide and lead iodide into clouds, increasing the rainfall and turning dirt roads into impassable mud. Okay, and the goal wasn't to create storms, it was to weaponize inconvenience, right? They wanted to make these roads as inconvenient as treacherous as possible for the enemy. And when the operation became public, a backlash, developed immediately. And in 1977, the United Nations passed the ENMOD Convention, that's ENMOD, banning environmental modifications for hostile military use. But just because they did that did not mean that the technology just was like, poof, disappeared, right? Well, what happened? Well, it went civilian, it went quiet, and it went contractual. Okay? And so one hypothetical or one question that we should be asking ourselves is, did we shut down one beast just to open up another beast or an even bigger beast? Okay? And so let's take another step back and let's talk about what cloud seeding actually is. So cloud seeding does not create rain from nothing. It only works when clouds contain moisture. And scientists introduce particles, and then, like we said, it's mostly silver iodide, but there's other things that they put into that, like lead iodide that we just talked about. And there's a couple other processes that they've used, like we said, dry ice, potassium chloride, and a few other different things. Okay, and they throw it into these clouds, and these particles act as nuclei, encouraging droplets or ice crystals to grow heavy enough to fall. And so, like, that's the purpose of all rain. So, like, a lot of people don't realize there has to be a couple things that happen within the atmosphere for rain to actually occur. First, there has to be enough moisture in the air. And second, there has to be some kind of dust or debris in the air for the water to accumulate on for rain to happen. And that's why if you have a nice, clean, waxed, shiny car and it rains, guess what? Your car actually becomes dirty. You go out and you look and you see the water spots. You see the dirt that was left behind from the rain. Okay? But we go back to these water droplets, these ice crystals, and they have to be heavy enough to fall. But if used properly, cloud seeding can do a couple different things. It can increase mountain snowpack, slightly boost rainfall during droughts. It can reduce hail damage, and occasionally clear fog near airports. Okay, and so, like, that's all the positive things. And when you look some of this stuff up, that's how they sell this crap, is they sell all the positives. But there are key limitations to this. Even under ideal conditions, studies show, okay, and so one thing we should probably do is look and see who is funding these studies. All right, so who or what company is funding these studies? So who's providing the money for these studies to be done, and who is actually doing the study themselves? Because those two things can become very biased, right? So anytime we're looking at a case study, we should really be paying attention to those two critical things: who paid for it and who's actually doing the study. Okay? And so these studies show modest results, usually within 5 to 15% of an increase in said precipitation. And cloud seeding itself is not control. Like, you don't have control of the clouds. It's not like, oh, let's go over here. Oh, let's go over here. Like, you don't have control of the clouds. But it is influence, and influence a lot of times is often enough. Okay? So let's take a look at some of the companies that are actively doing this, because if you talk to people about cloud seeding, and they're like we talked about earlier, like, oh, this is a conspiracy, like, this doesn't happen, this has never happened before, like, you're insane, get your tinfoil hat, like, okay. But weather modification today is no longer just conspiracy, and it's no longer just research. It is a service industry, a full service industry, okay? And so, like, if you're still on the fence that this stuff exists, I really encourage you to do a little bit of research, because this stuff is out there, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, but they're in the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars going into certain companies and corporations and individuals that makes this stuff happen. So the first company is Weather Modification Incorporated. And this company was founded in 1961, and it's one of the oldest U.S. cloud seeding firms. It operates aircraft and ground generators dispersing silver iodide, And they work with like the state agencies, water districts, and of course international clients on certain areas, certain things. You know, if they need more rainfall in that area, if there's a drought, vice versa, something like that. The next one would be NAWC, or the North American Weather Consultants. They've been active since the 1960s, conducting seeding operations and atmospheric research across the western U.S., particularly in like 3 different states: California, Colorado, and Nevada. And there's a lot of states that really buy into this, based in and around the Colorado River. And there's a whole reasoning behind that, because if you notice, a lot of the states, the borders border a river or a body of water. And the whole reason for that is that for the way that the law in a lot of states is wrote, is for a state to use the water, for that particular water, they have to have access to it, direct access. So it has to either be in the state, or the state has to border that river or lake for that state to be able to use it. Okay. And when we look at the Colorado River, there are a number of states that borders that river. And if you haven't looked into it in a while, I would encourage you to look at the water level at Hoover Dam, and how it has went down drastically in the last 30, 40 years. I mean, you're talking a lot of water is gone, because primarily California uses this water for agricultural purposes. Okay. But back to these companies, we have RH Consulting. They design state-specific seeding programs for public agencies, often acting as planners and evaluators rather than operators. So this company will come in and they'll evaluate the situation, or they'll plan something out for other companies to then come in and do the seeding process. We have Rainmaker Technology Corporation, and this is a newer startup that gained attention last year in 2025 after conducting a short reported cloud seeding mission over coastal Texas. Their CEO at the time, Augustus Dorico, publicly confirmed the operation. So those of you, once again, that are in denial about that, this company has publicly confirmed that they exist, and this is what they do. Okay. So scientists and officials later stated the mission did not cause the July 2025 Texas flash flood, despite viral claims online. And once again, this in reality, it's a new type of technology that has been used ever so increasing more and more year after year, all based off the amount of rainfall, where rain is falling, where droughts are happening, where crops are growing, where do we need rain, where do we not need rain. And so I personally don't think that enough research has been done. We've not been doing this long enough to see the long-term ramifications. We're also going to get into that a little bit later on as well. But Rainmaker's work reflects a trend that new tech and new delivery methods with the same fundamental limits. Okay? And remember, that's anything in general. Like, as we develop new technologies and we develop new delivery methods, those companies are going to change, and the way that they do things are going to change, and that's what this company is trying to do. Okay. We also have defense and aerospace, the adjacent layer. Major firms like Raytheon and Boeing, they're not publicly running cloud seeding operations, but they do build atmospheric sensors. They build satellite weather intelligence devices. They do climate and storm modeling systems, and they have dual-use technologies developed for defense. So even though Raytheon and Boeing don't do the cloud seeding themselves, they design and build a lot of the technology into what a lot of these companies are either currently using or are going to be using in the future, and for what reason are they using them. And so these systems form the backbone of modern weather modification research. And the weather may not be weaponized anymore, or is it? Right? Be a critical thinker. If a company can do this publicly, can a government agency do this without us knowing? Possibly, right? Put on your tinfoil hat for a second. Critically think about this. Also remember Operation Popeye that we talked about earlier. If the government has done it before and it worked, do you think that they'll do it again? Just off the record, off the books. Possibly. Maybe. Absolutely. Okay. So the weather may not be weaponized anymore, but the ability to predict, model, and influence it remains strategically valuable, right? Especially in the private sector, for companies, corporations, for farming. Remember, the food industry is huge. Okay? Got to feed the people, right? So who funds this in the United States? And this is where the system becomes clear. Cloud seeding in the U.S. is funded almost entirely by public money. So when you get into it, it says that the Pentagon doesn't fund it and secret agencies don't fund it. And when we look at state and local, their primary funding sources is for state water development offices, municipal water districts, agricultural coalitions, hydropower authorities, drought and mitigation budgets. So state and local governments are doing this. They are. Look into it. It is a thing. And so here's some examples. Utah, and there was another state. I was thinking it was Nevada as well. Yes. No, sorry, Utah and Colorado, California. But especially Utah, they spend roughly $5 million per year on cloud seeding to enhance snowpack in the Wasatch and Uinta ranges, up in the mountain ranges. Okay. Wyoming funds extensive programs through the Wyoming Water Department office. And when we look at the big three, like we talked about, all of the states that border the Colorado River, so Colorado, Nevada, California, they collectively spend millions annually through regional water authorities and through research institutions like the Desert Research Institute. And these programs are justified as quote-unquote cost-effective because it's cheaper than building new reservoirs. And we have it's faster than desalination, right? If we were to pull water from salt water, right? Pull the salt out of the salt water and desalinate it, make it usable, make it drinkable. Okay. So they say that this weather modification stuff is faster than that, and politically it's easier than the current water restrictions that we have in place. So the logic is simple. If you can get even a small increase in snowpack or rainfall, you can delay a crisis, right? And of course, the crisis that we're talking about is the crisis when we have a drought, or especially in like the snow region, there's a lot of states and companies and corporations that heavily rely on snowfall for ski resorts and things like that. Okay, so there's a lot of money that goes into these things. And so when we play follow the money, right? I always like playing follow the money. So globally, weather modification is hundreds of millions of dollars per year industry, and it's growing. And that all depends on how it's measured. So in the U.S., cloud seeding survives on renewable contracts. So what are those renewable contracts? Well, we have seasonal funding, we have pilot programs, and we have what they call multi-year extensions. And there's an incentive to the structure. If precipitation increases are measured or measurable, funding continues, right? It shows that it's working. If the drought worsens, political pressure grows, right? We need rain. Make it rain. So the politicians politically are going to pressure these companies into throwing more of these chemicals into the air to prove that their product is working. And if climate instability rises, demand increases. Okay? Well, what has a lot of people, especially over in the UN, and especially over in Davos, they talk about this climate crisis, right? We're always having some type of climate crisis. The Earth is going to heat up, and the polar caps are going to melt, and we're not going to have any water, and this and that and the other, right? So they're always trying to sell you the idea of climate instability, right? And so they always want to like raise that bar year after year after year because the demand for it is going to increase, and of course there's going to be more money flowing into these programs because of the increased demand. But no company needs full control of the weather, right? Hands down, we should all agree on that, right? No company needs to be like, you're in control of the weather and nobody else. Like, they only need a few things. They need plausible benefit. Does it benefit? And even if it's a fraction of a minute percentage, right? They can sell it. They need scientific uncertainty and public desperation for solutions, right? If they can sell us, and this is where they try to sell us on these climate crises, that wildfire was started because there was a drought. No, that wildfire was started because of a human done arson. They started the fire, and the fire spread from there, right? The big one from last year, from 2025, I forget which one it was. I don't think it was the Maui one. I think it was one of the ones that was in L.A. They actually proved that that was started by arson. But if you remember in the beginning, they tried to sell the idea, oh, it's climate crisis. It's the earth is heating up. We have to conserve water. We have to do this, that, and the other, right? So they have to create public desperation for desperate solutions, okay? And of course, that's the system. That's the system that we live in. That's the system that we're trying to break, right? So cloud seeding lives in this psychological gray zone. And in last year, in 2025, social media exploded with claims that cloud seeding caused catastrophic, the catastrophic Texas flooding. Okay. And once again, especially in the middle of the United States, what's supposed to happen tonight and tomorrow and Sunday and into Monday, right? We're supposed to have this massive storm that's coming through. Have you looked on Facebook? And of course, it's Facebook, right? So hold it with a grain of salt. Like, it's not the end all be all, like, oh, this has all the answers, right? It's Facebook, okay? Hence, this is where, right, we're hosting this podcast. But you get on Facebook, and what do you see? You see all kinds of people like, look at the sky, look at the sky. We have lines in the sky that go for miles and miles and miles, and the lines don't disappear, right? And they're like, oh, well, that's just the water vapor from the airplanes. That's just the water vapor from the jets and the engines. And so when you really look into it, no, it's not, because the water vapor from an airplane dissipates pretty quick. But when we're talking about cloud seeding, these look completely different. These lines, they normally do what? They crisscross in the sky, right? And they're in the sky for hours upon hours, sometimes days. And then lo and behold, they spread out, and then we get these weird looking like clouds that ripple that aren't normal looking clouds. Am I right? I'm right, okay? But this stuff's all over Facebook. And so once again, the social media exploding claims is that somebody somewhere wants this polar storm to be bigger than what it's originally supposed to be designed for. And I don't know why. Look it up, right? Use your brain, right? Look it up. But multiple claims from multiple states, from multiple people, right? And the pictures don't lie. All the pictures look the same, okay? But when we look at the scientists, when we talk to scientists reject it outright. That cloud seeding cannot create storms, and it cannot generate hurricanes, and it cannot override large-scale weather systems. But once again, have we done enough research into it? Who is funding the research? Where is the money coming from? Right? Follow the money. And so no matter what we do, fear is going to persist because water is power. And there is a lot of power that comes with water, because fresh water, usable, drinkable, growing plant water is very, very limited. Like, it's very limited. It's, what is it, like, out of all the water that we have in the world, only 3% of it is fresh water, and then like 1% of that is like usable water that we can get to, because the rest of it is trapped in reservoirs underneath the ground. So 1% of all the water on Earth is actually usable for everything that we do, okay? So keep that in mind. We can't use all the water as of yet. It's just too costly. So there's fear that persists there, and there should be fear. Like, we should be very fearful of running out of water in certain places for certain things. And when people hear weather modification, they imagine control and not influence. They also, I call it hyperventilation, or you can call it whatever you want. People going nuts, people going crazy. Go to Walmart today. Go to Walmart. Buy a gallon of milk. I bet you can't. Go to Walmart. Buy a loaf of bread. I bet you can't. Right? Because in this fear that persists, we go insane. Right? And we have to be prepared a little bit. Right? Because there is a potential for power to go out with this storm, and will with any storm. There is a potential for power to go out, which means that your refrigerators will stop working, your freezers will stop working. In some areas, the heat will go out, especially if you have electric heat, okay? And so people freak out. People try to stock up. But I do think that we over-exaggerate that, okay? You don't need 10 gallons of milk, and you don't need 20 loaves of bread, and you don't need 26 bags of potatoes, right? Or, whatever. I'm being sarcastic, but it does happen, and people do go crazy with this stuff, right? And so we have to take another step back and ask ourselves, is that not part of the system? Because the United States is based off what? Our whole system is based off capitalism. And if the stores are not selling enough items, what do? Well, in this case, we really sell it. We just sell the shit out of it. Like, it's going to be this horrific, catastrophic, like, absolute, monstrous, most terrible storm. And that's the way that they sell every one of them, right? And of course, like I said, we have to be a little bit skeptical about every single one of them, but we also have to prepare a little bit. Like, we can't go into these storms with our pants down and get frostburn. Okay, we have to have a little bit of food. We have to have a little bit of water. We have to have something to prepare for 3, 4, 5 days. But like the toilet paper shortage of COVID, like, you don't need 47,000 boxes of toilet paper just because the store doesn't have any, right? Okay. So cloud seeding is what it is not is planetary geoengineering. Not yet. Could it be? Maybe in the future. Who knows, right? It depends on how far we expand on this technology. Especially here in the United States, it depends on how much power we give our government and these companies into doing these things. And we have to stop lying to ourselves that these things aren't happening. Okay? And with that, it does raise real questions. And these questions are like, who decides when clouds are modified? That's a good one. Who benefits downstream? Okay? And the hypothetical downstream as well, right? With this, anytime money is involved, there's a trickle down, right? Who is paying somebody to pay somebody to pay somebody to pay somebody to get it done, right? And that's that trickle down, that downstream effect. Who is the one that measures success and who pays for it when it fails? Because almost any other time in human history, especially in United States history, who pays for it? We do. The nobodies. The citizens, the taxpayers, right? We pay for all this. Whether if it's out of pocket, whether if it's with our land, our homes, our lives, we pay for it, okay? When success is measured and how success is measured on these things. And as climate change intensifies through drought, which it does, like, climate is going to change. It's not going to stay the same forever. We have weather patterns that shift and move. The way that water circulates, the way that the air circulates, the way that the land moves because of tectonic plates. Like, things are moving and shifting all the time, and if you think the weather is going to stay the same all the time, you're in denial. Okay? So as climate change intensifies through drought, pressure to do something will only grow. And as the population increases, that's going to increase as well, right? Our dependency on water is going to increase as well. And influence, however small, becomes tempting. Because if these companies become extremely profitable, and they might be, you're going to have other companies that's going to follow suit, okay? And now we have a whole bunch of companies that are putting things like potassium chloride and dry ice and silver iodide and lead iodide into the air. And we have to understand that some of these are of a metallic nature. And these metals that we're throwing into the air that get onto the plants, that get into our drinking water, our clean water that we're already using, does that not cause issues as well? Like, are we doing research on that? Are we doing research on the way that these chemicals are altering the way that the ground is able to grow plants? Is it changing the chemical composition of the ground? And are we having to use more fertilizers and stuff now because of this as well? These are all good questions that we have to be asking, okay? And if we're not, then we're stupid, okay? And so the conclusion here is that rain does not obey borders, and clouds don't check permits. What cloud seeding reveals is not mystery or mastery, but our desire to manage the unmanageable, right? And as humans, we always try to do that. We try to manage literally everything. And so from Vietnam's monsoon experiment to modern water contracts of the American West, humans are trying to reach and keep reaching for the proverbial sky. Not because we control it, but because the system will reward and is rewarding anyone who claims that they might be able to. Okay? So with that, this is breaking the system. Keep asking the questions. And this is where we don't just explain what happens. We explain stuff like who's funding it, why it matters, and what is it really costing us. Ask these questions. We'll see you next time. Appreciate it.